My grandpa died while I was at uni, and I left his funeral early for exams. My mom called me selfish and cut me off, and I can't forgive myself. I'm 20 female, and on October 15th, my grandfather died while I was away at uni. My mom called between classes. I saw her name stepped out into the hallway because the lecture hall was packed, and I answered thinking it was about some bill or which charger I stole from home. She sounded like someone else. She said his name, then said passed, and I watched a kid drop his iced coffee in slow motion and splatter the tile. And I said, oh. I asked what she needed me to do. She paused like I just asked her for directions to a mall. Then she told me the basic facts, time to hospital that he went in his sleep, and I told her I had to get to class. I said it in that soft, careful voice I use when I want to end a call without being the villain. We hung up. I walked back into the lecture and sat down, and the professor was drawing a stupid diagram, and I wrote the word past in the margins of my notes and boxed it like it was a vocabulary term. I know how that sounds. Wrong. Empty. I don't do big cry performances. I don't even do little cries. I get hollow and jokey. My brain tries to drown the feeling in dumb, petty tasks. I clean. I scroll. I eat cereal out of a measuring cup because I don't want to wash a bowl. I make inappropriate jokes because if I say something awful, then at least I'm steering the car that's skidding on ice. I've also avoided death my entire life. We're not one of those families who loses people in clusters. My great-aunt died when I was 10, and the adults whisked me away before I saw the body. Movies cut away. Stories, and before you get to the part where someone smells like hospital pennies. I'm not practiced. I'm the kind of coward you don't realize you are until it's your turn. So after that call, I went to class. I took notes like a polite robot while my skin buzzed. My roommate texted asking if I wanted her burrito because she overordered, and I wrote back, "Death burrito," and then I felt sick because even my private jokes were mean. I laughed out loud, like a broken car horn, when the professor mispronounced a word. My friend Jess shot me a look like, "Are you okay?" And I nodded like, "Sure, I'm great. I'm a perfectly normal person who just learned that her grandfather, the person who used to pick me up from school in his faded blue cap and pretend to be my driver, who used to sneak me mango slices on the back porch, just doesn't exist anymore." After class, I walked in a big dumb circle around campus. The ginkgo trees had dropped their leaves overnight, and the sidewalks looked like someone spilled yellow paint everywhere. I kept thinking of how he used to take me past the park when I was little and say with fake seriousness, "Look, the trees are changing uniforms for the next season," and I'd salute like they were soldiers. I called my mom back because I felt like the kind of person who doesn't call back if I didn't. She didn't answer. She texted later, "We'll do the funeral Friday. Can you come?" I typed, "I have midterms," which was true. I did. Then I stared at the 3 dots while she typed and deleted, typed and deleted. Finally, she wrote, "You should still come." I wrote back, "I can come for a day." She said, "Okay, let me know the train." That was it. That night, I cleaned our entire dorm room like I was on a game show where the prize was not thinking. I scrubbed the microwave with vinegar. I dumped out the trash and carried the bag down the hall and felt weirdly proud. I told Jess what happened and cracked jokes. We all come with an expiration date, I said, and then I wanted to punch myself in the mouth. Jess hugged me and asked if I want to go home for longer. I said I had exams, and also my family would be intense, and I'd be weird. She asked what weird meant, and I said, "Just me." She offered to come with me, and I said no because I didn't want to witness. Sleep was a mess. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain queued up a clip of my grandfather at some hyper-specific age. The way he'd lean back and pop a grape in his mouth with one hand and pretend to miss. The way he'd knock his knuckles against the table when he told a joke like he needed a drum roll. I reached for my phone at 3 a.m. and scrolled until I ended up on a video of a guy making knives out of old coins. The comments were all beautiful and craftsmanship, and I wanted to scream. 3 hours later, I got up, dry swallowed a vitamin like it could cancel out the fact of mortality, and went to my first exam of the week. I nailed the question I'd been scared of, and for a second, I felt genuinely good. Then I remembered why the day was shaped the way it was, and the good feeling went sour. On Thursday night, I packed the most boring bag. Black pants, black sweater, deodorant, charger, my midterm notes, because I'm that person. I booked a ticket for a Friday morning train that would get me into the city by 10. I told myself one day would be enough because I'd be there for the important part, and then I'd leave before everyone started the round of storytelling and casseroles and hard looks. In my head, I framed it like discipline. I'm a student. I can't drop everything. That's what adults do. We make the hard choices. I framed it like love, too. He would have told me to study. He used to say, even when I go, I'll be annoyed if you flunk. I clung to that tone like a permission slip. The train ride felt like waiting in a doctor's office for bad news you already received. I watched the backyard slide by. The same above-ground pools wrapped in tarps, the same laundry lines, some kids' trampoline with leaves piled on it. A couple across the aisle took turns napping on each other's shoulders. A guy argued with someone on FaceTime who kept freezing. I opened my notes. I read one paragraph 3 times, and my eyes kept teleporting to his name in my head, the one I never say without adding Grandpa. My mom picked me up at the station and hugged me too hard. She smelled like lemons and stress. She didn't cry. She's also a holder of things until the last possible second. She said, "You look thin," and I said, "I ate a burrito the size of my head yesterday." And she said, "Okay," in that tone that means she heard a different sentence. We drove in silence. The city made that stupid alive noise it always makes no matter what anyone is going through. Honks, squeaky bus brakes, a bike bell. We hit 3 red lights in a row, and my mother's jaw pulsed like she was chewing anger. The house looked the same and not the same. My grandmother had washed the porch steps. My aunt's shoes were in a dramatic pile by the door, like a sad sculpture. The living room had chairs pulled from every part of the house, like a wedding setup. The big framed photo of my grandfather fishing in a hat he hated had been moved to the front hallway, surrounded by flowers that made the air smell like a dentist gave up and started selling soap. My father hugged me quietly and handed me a glass of water I didn't ask for. He doesn't know what to do with death either. He does tasks. My cousin was in the kitchen rearranging containers of food like a museum curator. She hugged me and whispered, "You okay?" And I said, "Yeah." And she snorted a laugh that told me she knew I was lying but didn't care enough to poke. The casket was at the funeral home. If we're being honest, we're one of those families that pretends we're not formal, and then the minute someone dies, everyone becomes a choreographer. There was a schedule. People exchanged printed sheets. Music got assigned like a group project. I hid in tasks. I wrapped stacks of plastic forks like we were hosting a picnic in hell. I opened and closed drawers looking for tape and pretended the tape mattered. Every time I glanced up, somebody older was crying, and somebody closer my age was on a phone pretending they weren't reading text messages that said, "Are you okay?" in 3 flavors. I thought I would dread the funeral home, but dread is simple. Reality is weirder. The carpet swallowed sound. Everything looked like an Instagram filter for grief. Soft lights, low ceilings, a box of tissues every 3 feet. There weren't crosses. My grandfather wasn't religious at the end, but there were tasteful neutral lamps as if light is what keeps everyone from screaming. When we walked in and I saw the open casket from across the room, I went blind for a full second. My eyes worked fine. My brain just pulled the plug. I stared at a painting of a lake on the opposite wall, like I was very into brushstrokes. I tried to notice details so I wouldn't notice anything else. The ugly fern in the corner, the way the molding didn't quite meet. My grandma walked straight over to him and smoothed his shoulder like she was waking him up from a nap, and I wanted the floor to open and swallow me. People say bodies look fake. Plastic. Wax. They're right, but not in the way I expected. He looked like someone tried to 3D print him from memory. It was him if you took the verbs away. He had his suit on, the one he wore to weddings when he felt like making jokes about how handsome he was, and his hands folded like a polite statue. I didn't go near him. I stood at the foot of the casket and looked at the flowers and the little card with his name like it was a museum label. I let my mom introduce me to a procession of cousins I already knew and neighbors who hugged me while I mapped the exits. I could hear my aunt sobbing in a way that dented the room. When my grandmother looked up at me with that expression, like my face was a rope she could grab, I looked away. I know what kind of person that makes me sound like. I stood near the guest book and talked to a lady who used to babysit me, who kept saying the same 3 words. Such a shock. I signed the book with my dumb legal signature like I was accepting a package. People told stories. My grandfather was a story magnet. He would stop on a sidewalk if he saw a kid with a balloon and ask where they got it, like balloon information was crucial. He once got scolded by mall security for pretending to be a mannequin. I heard the same 2 or 3 stories over and over in different voices, and each time someone reached the punchline, they looked around like they needed permission to laugh. I laughed the loudest. Big weird laugh. Some people smiled at me like that was healthy. Others looked like I'd cracked a bone. My cousin leaned over and hissed, "Maybe dial it down." And I said, "I don't have a dial. I'm factory defective," and then immediately felt crappy because I turned a grief warning into a bit. I didn't sit for long. Sitting meant I could get ambushed by a memory. So I kept finding corners to manage. I spent 20 minutes rearranging pamphlets so the staples aligned. I took a call from florist like I was some kind of staff member. I helped a little kid tie his shoe and made him giggle by crossing the laces a ridiculous number of times before I tied them properly. I refilled water cups like a waiter. Every time I thought about walking up to the casket and doing the thing, touching his hand, saying something soft like a movie character, I found another job. When my mom tried to herd me toward him, I said I needed to pee even though I didn't. By the time we started, the prayers the room had real heat in it. The kind that comes from too many bodies and too much shared attention. I stood between my parents and tried not to lock my knees because I read somewhere you can faint. I lip-synced because I didn't know the words to half the songs they picked, and I stared at the carpet so I wouldn't look at his face and break, and I hummed because humming is a way to be in the sound without committing. When the guy from the funeral home did his little speech and said my grandfather's full name in a crisp voice, a weird memory hit me. Me and Grandpa in the car him teaching me to parallel park in his old sedan him, saying, "Look at where you want a car to go, not at where you don't want it to hit." When you hear that kind of voice say the full name, you know the car has already hit something. At some point, my aunt asked if I wanted to help carry one of the flower arrangements to the car, and I said, yes, too fast like this was a sport I trained for. Outside, the air hit my face and made me feel like I'd been holding my breath for days. I stood with my cousin next to a fake fountain, and we both stared at the water like it was telling a story. She asked if I was okay. I told her my brain felt like a scratched DVD skipping to the same second over and over. She nodded. She said she had been dreaming in hospital beeps. We didn't hug. We just stood like 2 people at a bus stop in a version of reality with no bus. When it was time to go to the cemetery, I told my mom I needed to head back to the house to pack then to the station. She blinked like she lost the plot. She said she thought I was staying through the burial. I said I couldn't. I had to get the late train back or I'd miss my exam on Monday. Her mouth did a tight little thing. She didn't raise her voice. She said, "We talked about this." I said, "We did," and I said a day. She said, "We're not even done." I said, "I'll say goodbye here." We stared at each other like 2 people on opposite sides of a river trying to pretend the water isn't there. Then she nodded sharp and walked away like she didn't trust her face. I said my version of goodbye. I stood near him and gripped the edge of the casket and stared at the seam in the satin pillow like it was the most interesting thread in the world. I whispered something stupid. I told him I knew he would tell me to go study. I told him I loved him. I told him he owed me $5 from the last time we bet on whether Grandma would beat him at cards. I did everything but look straight at him for longer than half a second because if I did, I knew I'd see the part where the makeup didn't hide the blue at the edge of his fingernails. Then I left. I know how it reads when you type it out like that free of context. I left my own grandfather's funeral early because I had exams. I walked out into the sunny, stupid day with my little backpack like a teenager in a movie about bad choices. I got an Uber back to the house, and the driver asked how my day was, and I said fine, because what is the other option? At the house, my grandmother's purse sat on the chair, where she always leaves it. A coaster had stuck to the bottom of someone's water glass and left a wet ring like a target. I shoved my sweater into my bag and felt like the worst person in the family. I wrote a group text to my cousins that said, "I love you, I'm heading back for exams, call me later," and set the phone face down because I didn't want to see their bubble-shaped judgment. The train ride back was worse than the ride there because now I had official words glued to me like selfish and cold. I stared at the window until my reflection became a ghost. Who knew it could happen in daylight? And then I texted my mom. I broke my own rule about waiting for a better time and wrote out what I had been hoping I could say in person, except I couldn't say it in person because I'm a coward. I told her the number one reason I couldn't stay longer wasn't the exam, it was that being around death does something bad to me. I told her I wasn't good at grief in public, that I freeze and joke and start acting like a robot, and it makes me feel like everyone can see how wrong I am. I told her I wanted to be there, but every minute in that room felt like someone was pressing down on my chest, and I couldn't get air. I said I loved him and I loved her, and that if I stayed, I would either run or say something awful to someone who didn't deserve it. The train hit a rough patch of track while I watched the typing dots appear and disappear. Then her message arrived. She wrote that she understood people grieve differently. She wrote that she accepted that my brain does what it does when it gets overwhelmed. Then she wrote, "But you were selfish not to put your feelings aside for your grandfather's funeral. I expected better from you. Please avoid contacting me for a while." That last line read like a judge hitting a gavel. I stared at it until the dots in the eyes looked like holes I could fall into. I could tell you I cried then, and that would prove I'm not a sociopath, but I didn't. I sat very still, like if I moved my bones would make a sound. I felt something cave in under my ribs. It wasn't even guilt yet. It was the shape guilt would live in. I typed okay and didn't send it. I tried to write a paragraph about exams and trains and logistics. A rational counterargument like this was a debate and not a life. I deleted that too. I texted Jess instead. "My mom thinks I'm a shit person." She wrote back, "You are not. I'm making you pasta." That night back in our room, she boiled noodles and I stared at the pot like I could divine a better version of the day in the steam. We ate on the floor because the desk had stacks of notes and because the floor felt like ground, like if I laid down there the world wouldn't tip. For the next week, I played a game with myself that psychologists probably have a name for. It's the game where you try to do everything perfect and invisible so that your presence doesn't take up any burden space. I went to class. I wrote notes. I set timers to drink water. I answered people's "how are you" texts with hanging in or studying. I didn't post anything anywhere. My grandmother texted me a heart emoji 2 days after the burial that made me cry in a laundry room. I kept replaying tiny angles of the funeral and the house like body cam footage. The way my aunt's hand shook when she passed me a napkin. The way my cousin blinked too much. The way the staircase creaked in that groaning old house way when my grandmother went up to change. All the little human noises and movements people make when they're holding a universe in their throat. I also kept replaying everything I did. How I stood near the guest book like a guard. The laugh that came out of me too loud when someone told a golf story. The way I darted around the room like a bird stuck inside. I tried to figure out when exactly I could have changed the story. If I had looked straight at him earlier, would my body have caught up and let me cry? If I had stayed one more night, would my mom have seen me try and soften? If I'd held my grandmother's hand for longer than 2 seconds, would that gesture have bought me some moral points that I could cash in for the sin of leaving? I know the answer is probably not like that. People don't tally grief the way you tally tips after a shift. But my brain likes math. It wants someone to say, "Okay, you did 7 wrong things and 3 okay things that makes you in the red. Please do 2 more okay things, and we can wipe your moral debt." Nobody says that. People just look at you, and you try to tell if they're seeing the worst version of you. Midterms came, and I did well, because that's my other horrible personality trait. I will do almost anything to not fail publicly, including dissociate through entire life events if the due date demands it. After my last exam, I walked back to my dorm and called my grandmother. I almost didn't because I was still obeying my mother's avoid contacting me, and I felt like dialing the house might count as a violation. Then I told myself I'm an adult and you don't need a permission slip to call your grandmother. She picked up on the second ring and said my name in that long way only she does, each syllable like a step on a staircase. She asked how my test went, and I told her, and she cheered like I'd won a race. Then her voice did something soft and weird around the edges, and she said he would be very proud. That sentence cracked me. I didn't sob, but I did that awful hiccup breath thing that makes you sound like a broken recorder. She waited. She didn't say, "There it is." She didn't narrate it. She just let me make whatever noise my body needed to make. When I finally got my lungs back, I told her I was sorry I left. She said, "You came. You'll come again. You're my girl." I could have fallen into that sentence. After I hung up, I texted my mom, and then I didn't send it because she told me not to contact her And I'm saying this not to make her sound cruel, but to show you how rules get sticky when you're trying to be a good daughter after you've already failed. I wanted to say, I called Grandma to check on her. I didn't ask about you because you told me not to, but I'm thinking of you. I wanted to say, I am selfish. I'm also scared. I'm trying. Instead, I put my phone on my desk and stared at it like a campfire. The thing about not seeing death is that it doesn't stop death from being in your head. When I try to sleep, my brain served me movie trailers I didn't buy a ticket for. Him laughing, then a sudden jump cut to the open casket in that tasteless light. Him chopping tomatoes the way he curled his fingers under so he wouldn't cut himself, then a jump to the undertaker's hands crossing his. The smell of his aftershave at their house, then the cloying sweet funeral flowers that make your teeth feel like they've been sugared. My body did its dumb tricks too. The buzzing, the stomach lava, the impulse to make a joke about anything. I told Jess my jokes were like those party poppers you twist at New Year's. Stupid, loud bursts of confetti to cover the silence. She laughed and then said, more serious, "It is also okay to be a bitch to death. It deserves it." I love her a little extra for giving me a way to be pissed instead of only wrong. I started having out loud arguments with my mom in my head like some middle schooler rehearsing a slam. She would say, "You were selfish," and I would say, "I came," and she'd say, "One day," and I'd say, "I told you," and she'd say, "He only dies once," and I'd say, "And I only get 1 GPA," and even thinking that made me want to throw myself into the river for even turning a sentence like that in the light. On the worst day, when the post-funeral weirdness curdled, my aunt called. My aunt is a firecracker wrapped in floral paper. She loves hard and fast and burns anyone in the blast zone if they get too close on the wrong day. She told me she'd talked to my mom that my mom didn't mean avoid contacting me, like a court order that grief makes people pick the nearest person and bite. She said, "Your mother is not good at being disappointed." She turns it into a sermon. I laughed without humor because yes. She said something that stuck in my ribs. When your grandfather died, everyone started auditioning for the part of who they think they are. Your mother tried to be the dutiful chief mourner. You try to be the responsible student. I try to be the guard dog. None of us got the balance right. I want to put that on a poster and hang it not because it solves anything, but because it sounds like a map. I asked her if Grandma was okay, really okay, not old lady okay. She said she makes tea. She sits at the table. She talks to him. I pretend I don't hear. That is our compromise. I wanted to get on a train, right then, no exams, left no excuses. I wanted to show up at the kitchen table and make tea and pretend I didn't hear too. Then I pictured stepping into the house and feeling that same pressure in my chest, and I pictured my mother's face when she saw me and how it would be this mix of relief and still angry, and I caught myself scheming for the version where I got only the relief. That is the kind of scheming that makes you feel like you're carrying a knife behind your back in your own home. I did go back 2 weeks later after the "don't contact me" for a while had aged into a soggy silence. I didn't announce it because I'm a coward and because I thought if I told my mom she'd tell me not to, and then I'd either obey and hate myself or disobey and make it worse. I got on a Friday train with my bag and my guilt and a box of cookies Jess baked for my grandmother. When I walked in, my grandmother lit up like I had wheels and the groceries she forgot. She hugged me fragile and then held me at arm's length and said, "Look at you," like an inspection. She put the cookies on a plate before she even said thanks. That's how we operate. Feed first, talk second. My mom came down the stairs in her house, slippers holding a stack of towels like a shield. We looked at each other for a long time. I should have said, "I'm sorry," right then. I should have made my mouth do that, without my brain trying to phrase it like an essay. Instead, I asked, "Where should I put my bag?" She said, "Your room." She didn't say, "Of course." She didn't say my name. She didn't smile or frown. She became a towel-carrying motion machine, and the conversation moved around us like air. We made it through dinner by talking about things with names. The neighbor's dog, the street repaving, an article my dad read and wanted to summarize because that is his love language. Halfway through the rice, I said, "I'm sorry I left early." It dropped into the meal like a fork off the table. My mom put her hands in her lap like a school kid and stared at the stain on the tablecloth that never comes out. She said without drama, "I needed you." I said, "I know." And she said, "You chose school." And I said, "I chose breathing." and she closed her eyes because she hates when I make metaphors that make her sound like the villain. I said, I couldn't look at him long without feeling like I'd break where everyone could see it, and then I'd make it about me. And she said, the funeral is about all of us, and I said, I wasn't ready to be an us. We sat in that shitty stalemate for a minute. Then my grandmother, like a queen bored with her court, pushed her chair back and said he would forgive her in a tone that ended the argument. She stood up and started making tea because that is how she asserts sovereignty. My mom breathed like a runner. She said quietly, I know. When someone dies, you go to the thing. That is what we do. I nodded until my neck hurt. I said I went. Not the whole thing, not the right way. I know. I am sorry. She nodded. The nod was not dramatic. It didn't absolve me. It was an acknowledgement that words were said. She asked if I wanted more rice. I said no because I didn't trust my stomach. My grandmother put a cookie on my plate like a sacrament. That night in my old room, surrounded by things that look like memorials to other versions of me. The soccer trophy where I played defense so badly, I became good the poster of a band I pretended to love because a boy did. I lay awake and listened to the house breathe. My mother padded past my door on her way to the bathroom. She paused. I could feel it. She almost knocked. She didn't. A car went by outside the tires, making that soft swish on the new asphalt. I pictured him standing in the doorway the way he used to when he picked me up early for breakfast before school. He'd wait half a second, then order me to get up like a drill sergeant, but with a smile. I could see the brim of his cap in the dark. The room became a thimble. I sat up. I whispered sorry to the air because I didn't know what else to do. It wasn't grand or cinematic. It was the kind of sorry you say when you bump someone with your bag on the train. I said it again and again until the word lost its parts and became a sound like air leaving a tire. In the morning, my mom made pancakes and didn't burn them. This is love in my house. We ate with our heads down like monks. She asked me about classes in a normal tone. I answered in a normal tone. The normality felt rubbery, but it held. Before I left for the train, I hugged her and my hand shook. She didn't say, don't be a stranger, because she is not that person. She said, text me when you get there, because she is that person. On the way out, I ran my fingers along the door frame like a kid measuring her height, and I felt the notch he carved there when I turned 10. He measured me every birthday and then wrote the date with his little carpenter pencil in the wood. I pressed my thumb to my year. That was the closest thing I've had to a religious experience. Back at school, I stopped trying to write the perfect message to my mom and started sending her dumb little updates like saw a squirrel steal a whole bagel, as if we could build a bridge out of squirrels and carbs. Some days she wrote back right away. Some days she didn't. I mailed my grandmother a picture I took of the ginkgo trees because I thought she liked the yellow like spilled paint. She sent me back a photo of her hand holding a teacup, and I cried for a full minute in the campus bathroom with a good light. I went to the counseling center, once sat on the couch like a person in a stock photo, and told the woman there that I was not good at grief. She said very kindly that nobody is good at grief, they are only practiced. I told her I didn't want to practice. She said that was fair. She asked me to list 5 good things about my grandfather, and I gave her 8 because my brain is a show-off when there are lists. I wrote some of those things down not because I'm a journal person. I'm not, but because saying them out loud felt like spitting into wind, and writing them felt like putting them on a shelf. He would rename the dog at the park every time he saw it. He would give a running commentary in the grocery store about the price of tomatoes like he was on a game show. He would pretend he didn't know how to use his phone every time he wanted attention. He would leave a little coin on the windowsill and then make a big show of finding it to give to me as if I were a wizard attracting money. He would beep his car horn when we passed our own house to make Grandma yell. He would say drive like everyone is an idiot, which is both good advice and a decent way to handle life. He would never let a cashier put eggs under heavy groceries. He would walk out of a movie and demand his money back if he hated it. He never got it back. I'm writing all of this not because I think the internet needs one more sad granddaughter post, but because my mom's text to avoid contacting me, one formed a bruise I keep pressing. It has faded a little. I called her last night, and we talked for exactly 9 minutes about laundry and whether I should bring my winter coat when I come home for Thanksgiving. We didn't say his name. We didn't say mine. But she told me not to use too much fabric softener because it ruins towels, and I said I know, and she said, you always say you know, and I said because I do. And she said, okay, and I swear you could have spliced that conversation onto any week in my life. I hung up and thought, maybe we're people who can only do repair by pretending we didn't break. People have DM'd me, friends mutuals, since I told the short version of this in a group chat. Some said, you did what you had to do, in that brave tone people use when they're forgiving themselves by proxy. Some said, you should have stayed, in that clean tone people use when your choices disappoint them because it means their own choices stand. The truth is probably worse and softer than both. I did what I could do then, and it wasn't enough. And now I live with that. Some days the living with is a little weight I carry around like a library book, and sometimes it's an anvil. I can't fix the past with a better paragraph, but I can get on more trains. I can hold a hand for more than 2 seconds. I can glance straight at the face in the box next time and let my bones make whatever sound they need to make. My grandmother told me on the phone yesterday that she talked to him while she watered the plants, and he isn't answering the rude man. And we both laughed, and then she said very quietly, isn't it ridiculous that we keep breathing? And I said yes. I don't have any wisdom. I have a little list taped inside my desk drawer now, though, where I can't see it unless I open it on purpose. It says, look where you want the car to go. It says, eat the mango. It says, when you leave, always say, I love you in the doorway. It says, you can be scared and still show up. That last one is the one I'm not good at. But I'm practicing not because I want to be good at grief, but because I'm stuck with it. If I could talk to my mother instead of texting her, I'd say something honest that isn't catchy. I chose the version of the day that didn't break me, and it still broke you. I wish I had chosen the version that broke me with you. That sounds like a line. It isn't. It's the only thing I know how to put into the space. I'll go home again. I'll sit at the table. I'll water the stupid plants. I'll fold towels correctly so she can be mad at me about something normal. I'll drive past the cemetery and not go in because I don't know what to do there yet, but I'll say his name out loud in the car and turn down the radio for a second like a person expecting a reply. I don't know if anyone learns how to do this without fucking up. People online say grief isn't linear, like it's a quirky fun fact. It's not linear and it's not circular. It's just everywhere. It shows up when you open a jar and the lid sounds like a gasp. It shows up when you pass a hat in a store and your brain goes by it for him and then slams into the wall of reality hard. It shows up when you're studying for a test you do not care about and you realize the only reason you care at all is because somewhere along the way you believe being good at tests meant you were good at life. Maybe that's the saddest part of my story. Or maybe it's that I will always be the person who left early. Both can be true. I could be the person who left early and also the person who calls her grandmother twice in 1 week because the tea photos make her cry. I could be the selfish girl, and I can be the one who learns to stand by a box without looking away. So here I am anonymous, handing this to the void because I don't know where else to put it that won't bounce back and hit me in the face. You can judge me. You can reassure me. You can say same and mean it, or say couldn't be me and mean that too. I'll read it and I'll feel something. And then I'll go to class. I'll pick up my notes. I'll walk past the ginkgo trees in their ridiculous yellow uniforms and let the leaves stick to my shoes. I'll call my mom from the bus stop and tell her something dumb like my professor says foliage wrong. And maybe she'll laugh and maybe she won't. And either way, I'll put my phone in my pocket and stand there like a person who knows buses come when they come. Now, this has been growing on me, and I'm thinking more and more about this, that I was selfish to do so, but I am still not able to process what I have lost. So am I the asshole? My opinion, not asshole here. You and your mom were having 2 different conversations. You were talking about how you handle death. You shut down, keep moving crack jokes so you don't fall apart. She wasn't trying to police your grief. She wanted her kid near her while she buried her dad. That's need not control. Could you have stayed longer? Maybe. Would that have magically fixed anything? Probably not. Grief makes people grab the closest person and squeeze too hard. Give her space, then show up in small, steady ways. Calls a visit helping your grandma. Tell her plainly, I love him, I love you, I just break differently. You could be overwhelmed and still be supportive. Both truths fit. Good luck, OP. So guys, what do you think of this story?